Here we are today. I've got a little project for us. Here's a brand new prop shaft for a Polaris Ranger 800. This is a brand new factory replacement from Polaris, warranty replacement actually, and we're going to go ahead and put this in a 2012 HD Ranger. It's on its original prop shaft, I believe, with around 1900 hours or 2000 hours. This is not a very enjoyable job. Kind of give you a little peek here at where we're going to be working. Sorry about the poor lighting. What I'm going to be doing first is remove this air box here. Probably a couple zip ties. Remove the skid plate from underneath. And that's going to be your easiest way to access that drive shaft. Also remove the center, I don't know what the correct term for this would be, but the center floor portion of your floor here, the Torx headed screws, just take them out. Take out your center floor portion. That's going to help you get better access to getting that prop shaft out, in and out. Polaris recommends, I believe, unhooking the prop shaft and removing, I'm going to try to show it to you here. There's a hose right there, this guy, air hose that hooks into a plastic air pipe. They want you to remove that air pipe that goes all the way to the front to gain clearance to remove the prop shaft. You tell me what part of that looks like fun. I'm not doing it, so I've taken these out my own method. I'm going to show it to you here. It's not for everyone, but if you're up for a little bit of a challenge, I think you'll do just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and take some parts off and do the step-by-step and update as I go along where I got to where I'm at. So we'll see at the next clip here. Okay, here we are, a little ways farther into it. I did want to show you that you can see the prop shaft from the front. Yoke right there. Barely visible, but you can tell there's a lot of oil leakage on the back of that pinion. It looks like another job for me later on to do, but before you get started with this project, it's a good idea to hit that yoke with a bunch of penetrating oil just to get the spline soaked with oil. It'll help removal of that yoke later on. It's just good to hit that early so you can help get that roll pin out and yoke off later. Same thing in the back here. This yoke right there, if that's not been greased much, or if you've never greased it, be sure and hit that area with penetrating oil. Get those splines lubed up as best you can. Maybe give it a few shots of grease on the grease zerk right there. So anyway, I pulled this air box off just for ease of access. You wouldn't have to do that. So underneath, you can get a better view of the prop shaft there. And just, it's a real mess, but it's going to make it easier to get the prop shaft out. One thing I did want to show you, get on the creeper here. Okay. Boy, it is leaking. I don't know if you can see this very well. There's your yoke. You're going to go right through the hole in the bottom of the skid plate to drive out the dowel pin for that yoke. You can actually just see it. Turn the yoke or the drive shaft a little. There it is, right there. Best thing to do there is to hit that with an air hammer. Not enough clearance under these Rangers to get a very good swing on it with a hammer and punch. I have done it, but it is tough. So use an air hammer if you have one. If not, you might have to get maybe loan one or get creative. Maybe use a jack and a punch. You know, jack up slowly, use the weight of the machine, but I'd caution against that too, because if a punch slips, then your hand could get pinched. I mean, you could maybe try a bottle jack or something, but be real cautious with that. It's just best to have the right tools. So drive that roll pin out first, and then what we're going to attempt to do here is take that drive shaft. You're going to have to slide it rearward until it comes off the front splines. Once it's popped off of the front pinion there, you're going to want to take it to the left and then slide it as far forward as you can up next to the front differential, so that the rear yoke will slide off the splines of the transmission back here. That's the only way to get that off. Once your drive shaft is free, we'll go to the next step here. Okay, moving forward here, I was able to get the drive shaft pushed back. Actually, it came right off the splines because they were all oily from that pinion leak up there, which is, I can tell you, is almost never the case. So I slid it rearward, got it off the front pinion shaft, and then I slid it all the way forward and to the left, and got it off the rear shaft. And there is not more than enough clearance, there's just enough. So then I took and lifted that drive shaft above the pinion as high as I could get it, and move around underneath. And you can see cross member there, kind of got my pry bar sitting on it. We're going to have some bind here between that shaft, or between the shaft, that cross member, and that cross member. We're going to pry down on the drive shaft as we go rearward with it. There's going to be some binding. You're going to be afraid that it might bend, and it's not going to. Bend it down slightly and go rearward with it until you get it back far enough that the front of the drive shaft will pop out into this opening, and then you'll be able to remove it more easily. And I will set the camera up here so you can kind of watch how I do it, if there's anything to be seen. See if I can get a decent angle for you guys. We'll try about there. The key here is to pry downward. Use the frame. Don't lever off the engine. It's all aluminum, and aluminum doesn't like that very well. So try to pry down and rearward. Just keep moving with it. This takes a pretty good pry bar. Snap-on is the best, but probably a Napa bar will work. Get a 2-foot long one at least. Just like that. Here we are. Generally these fail up in the front. You get a lot of slop in the yoke. These joints are all bound up. There's not as much slop there as I thought, but there's some up and down. You can sure hear it when you drive. There's a little back here. Not as bad. I've seen much worse, but it just gets worse from here. Polaris does not make these joints serviceable, which means they got a limited lifespan, kind of like the rest of the machine. They are not built to be maintained or they're not basically built to be loved on at all by their owners. They're a limited lifespan piece of equipment. So one thing you can do, you can choose to rebuild your own prop shaft. This U-joint is available at almost any part store. I believe Precision makes the U-joint. It's a P338 joint. You can also just have them cross just to a 338 U-joint. It should cross over to whatever brand your manufacturer has on hand. Very common U-joint. You can get one with grease zerks, put the grease zerks in, grease them before you put the U-joint, or before you put the prop shaft back in. I believe you can grease the rear one. I do not know if you can grease the front. I don't know if there's access. I have not tried it yet. I've done 2 of these this year, just recently with these newer U-joints, and I haven't had them in long enough to even try to service them yet. It would be nice if a person could service them, but time will tell, I guess. Even if it means, you know, taking a plasma cutter and cutting a special hole in the front skid plate just to service it, it would be probably a good thing to do. So going back in is a lot, basically just the reverse of what we just did. When you go back together, this front hole where we drove the roll pin out, to help yourself in the future, replace this with a 5/16 bolt. Just a grade 5 bolt will be fine. And just use a lock washer and a nut on the other side, or use a lock nut, whatever you have. That'll make it easier for the next guy to get that out. And actually going back together is much easier to put a bolt and nut on than it is to try to drive a roll pin back in. Also coat the splines with a lot of anti-seize, both ends. Hopefully some of that will stick with it and make it easier to get off next time. Aside from that, I don't know what else to add. Going back together, like I say, is just a reverse of what we just did. It's a little trickier going back in because you'll have to take this end and push it down under the cab floor. I've got a light here. That cab floor there in the front, you'll have to work that prop shaft down, get it under there, and then get back underneath and shove the prop shaft up some more and keep working it ahead, but just do it the reverse of how you removed it. And that's all for now. Hopefully I was of some help to you guys that need to do this to your Ranger.